I'm only cringing because I know what's coming, and I think you know what's coming too. Hello everybody, Chris Eden Green here, and welcome to this very special video commemorating 10 years of Steam Locos In Profile. Christ, hard to believe where the time's gone. On Friday, January the 6th, 2012, we released the very first episode of this show about the LMS Black 5s, and since then, well, it's been a ride. I wouldn't say it's been everything that we'd expected it to be, but it's been a ride, and at this point I'd just like to say thank you to everyone who has joined us for that ride. Now, other YouTubers who celebrate this kind of milestone would do something a bit more elongated than this. They would do a number of specials or a documentary, and I didn't really fancy doing any of that because I didn't want to be too pretentious about it, because, let's be honest, it's not that special. But I thought I'd do something a bit different to mark the occasion, so I am going to rewatch the LMS Black 5's episode with you guys and tell you about some of the foibles and stories that I had in producing it. Now, for context, I haven't watched this whole episode through for a number of years. When someone orders a copy of one of my DVDs, I always test it to make sure that it works. So I put it in the machine, make sure it loads up, and then I play one of the episodes through to make sure it doesn't skip over any damaged areas. Sometimes they do slip through the net, and I am sorry about that. But normally, whenever someone orders a Volume 1, I test one of the other episodes all the way through. It's usually the U-boats, or the panniers, or the 4Fs. I've usually tended to avoid this one. Even though I have seen bits of it down the years. But, you know, it's been a while, and it's 10 years to the day, so I thought, why not? And who knows, if this goes well and you guys like it, then feel free to let me know in the comments if you'd like me to do more in the future. So, crack open your best pint of whatever it is you prefer to drink, and let's get started. I should perhaps point out before we begin that this isn't the original cut of the episode. The 2012 cut somehow went AWOL a couple of years ago, so this is the 2014 digital download and DVD cut. But the only changes that have really happened during that time are a couple of colours that have been corrected in one or two shots here and there, and the intro. The original intro was a lot longer, more elongated and boring, so if anyone complains about this one, trust me, it used to be worse. But here goes. No kidding, I thought it was the 8Fs. They both look the same. That little person running across the room. The most general purpose of all general purpose machines. One of the most numerous and most successful in the UK, they were the LMS's maid of all work, described by many as an engine you could take anywhere. So that shot there of 4532. So that shot there of 45231 going across on the West Highland extension, that was taken during the middle of a 2,100 mile road trip that I did all around the UK in the middle of 2011. I just took off for 3.5 weeks and did as much filming then as I could. And I did various other bits of Black 5s around the country during that trip, as well as other bits of filming around there. But that was a good fun chase. In the early 1930s, the LMS's prime motive power consisted largely of clapped-out pre-grouping designs and the Royal Scots. So when William Stanier came along in 1932, he was really thrown in at the deep end to bring things up to scratch. Ultimately, though, he fought back, and one of his greatest designs ultimately had to be these, the Black 5s. In terms of quantities, few classes could outrival these. With 842 constructed across 5 manufacturers between 1934 and 51, it's fair to say they were successful enough. In fact, bet you can notice there was a slight deviation in sound quality there. That was initially because when we did the PTCs there, I'll tell you more about that in a sec, but when we did the PTCs at the National Railway Museum, I did get the detail of how many were built slightly wrong. So instead of between 1934 and 51, I thought it was 1934 and 50. And then I went back and looked afterwards and went, oh no, it's 51. So I went back and corrected that bit of audio and tried to match it up in the edit. But I'm surprised no one's really picked me up on that before. But there we go. Orders suggest that Stania just intended to produce 200 of these things. Seems a bit extreme, doesn't it? I mean, I've heard of buy one, get one free, but that's just ridiculous. So all of these bits that we shot at the National Railway Museum, this was the last piece of filming that we did for this episode, and there was a bit of a saga in getting this bit together in the first place. I thought that instead of just turning up and shooting, I thought best try to do this the official way, and so I got in contact with the National Railway Museum via their website about the summer of 2011, I think it was, and then asked, would you mind if we did this? And I think one of them got back to me about 4 or 5 months later, and said, yes, you may do it, but these are some of the terms and conditions that we have. And I explained to them what it was going to be. I explained that I was going to turn up with a tripod and a radio mic so that I could just plonk the camera down, stand in front of it, talk to the camera, and then sort of muddle it all together in the edit afterwards. So there'd be no need for like loads of cabling or loads of lighting or a sound boom or anything like that. So just keep it simple, keep it compact and all the rest of it. They were still going to charge me £370 an hour just to use a tripod. And the tripod, for context, it wasn't even a very expensive one. In fact, I've got it here. Just a sec. Because you're going to laugh at this. So they're going to charge me £370 an hour to use that. And that would have cost you, what, 40 quid at Jessop's back in 2010? So it wasn't even a very good tripod. So I ended up getting around this by asking my friend Sam, who came on later as part of the full-time crew, to just stand and hold the camera for me, because that was the loophole, really. Just to make it clear, if Anthony Cools happens to be watching this, not that he would be, because I imagine he's got more important things to worry about than watch some idiot on YouTube. But Anthony, if you are watching this, I appreciate what you guys do. This isn't meant to be any kind of anti-NRM propaganda or anything like that, so please don't take this as an attack. No hard feelings at all on this front.
But look at what they produced. Stania's time in Swindon came in handy when he designed these engines. Their basic principle was not dissimilar to that of the Great Western Halls. A 2-cylinder 460 with a 225 psi tapered boiler and 6-foot driving wheels. But there were some obvious differences, such as outside Walshart's valve gear, left-hand drive, and a dome. Well, not on the first ones anyway. They also had better superheating and a more weatherproof cab than their Swindon rivals. They looked more modern too. With no brasswork, a plain outline and black livery, Stania didn't intend to show these things off. But in service, they stirred up quite a few surprises.
On a 72-minute run from St Pancras to Leicester, the Midland compounds could manage, just, a 9-coach load within the specified time. Stania's Jubilees, although they were brand new, could barely match that, and the Patriots could only knock off about 2-3 minutes. One Black 5, though, managed the same run, unassisted, in 65 minutes. That's a good 7 minutes quicker than Johnson's souped-up 440s. Progress much? Now that shot there of what is it, 44932 I think it is, passing one of my local stations in Kent, that was taken in September 2010, and up until that point I thought I'm not going to, and up until that point I decided I'm not going to do anything handheld for this show. I'd started filming slips about 7 months or so beforehand. It was February 2010 when I started doing my first shots, and I thought straight away, I'm not going to do any handheld shots on this show. It's all going to be mechanical. Everything's going to be on tripods or tracks or anything like that. But on this occasion, I got to the station as she was going to go on her way from London to Hastings, and I remembered that I'd forgotten my tripod. And I only had 5 minutes to spare before she was due to come through, so I thought, all right, I'll try and get this handheld and get it as steady as possible. She came through. I thought, oh God, I've cocked this up. But when I went back to the edit and I fitted it into this part of the episode, I actually thought, maybe this doesn't work as... maybe this works better than I thought it would. So, I suppose, lesson there, if it's handheld, it's not necessarily crap, but just make sure it fits the moment, I suppose. But then you tell me if it fits the moment.
And the records just kept coming. On another run in 1938, from Birmingham New Street to Burton, number 5274 took its 8-coach 260-ton train over the 30.2 miles in 27 minutes and 32 seconds, at speeds around 20 miles an hour quicker than the compounds. There was a run of 92 miles an hour recorded after the war, nearly the same as an LNER V2 before the war.
Shots are a bit shaky.
But most impressive of all was on a 7 AM express from Euston to Rugby, when number 5378 took a 460-ton load, normally handled by Pacifics or Royal Scots, and still managed to keep to the same time.
At the end of the run, driver Walls from Liverpool was actually quoted saying, "Not bad for a goods engine." Another thing about those interior shots of number 5000, we arrived at the National Railway Museum, I think it was early December 2011 that we shot this, and we shot 2 PTCs that day. We shot the PTCs for this and for the A4s. We arrived at the museum just before they opened at 10 in the morning, and we stayed there until they shut at about 5 o'clock at night. We did number 5000 first. It was in this canvas shed which is outside the South Hall, and it was freezing there. We got all the PTC stuff done in just under an hour, and then I stayed on another hour or so to get all of the close-ups of the locomotive, by which time, the end of which, I was being dragged away, literally dragged away by Sam to get some lunch, because he was freezing cold, and he just wanted to go and have lunch, and I was like, no, I need to get this one more shot, this one more shot, this one more shot. Sometimes you can get all the close-ups in the world, and they don't all end up in the finished video.
Put simply, the Black 5 seemed to get stuck in anywhere the London Midland network could send them.
It has.
From the fields of Hampshire and the home counties, right up to the Highlands of Scotland.
Still like that cut.
Footplate crews didn't take long to like them, nor did fitters and passengers, and over the years, a few modifications and experiments were carried out, such as a few with double chimneys, others fitted with Caprotti valve gear, and one with Stevenson link motion. For what they were, they also made a half-decent noise. I mean, how's this for a bark? So successful with these.
So this is top field on the Keighley and Worth Valley Railway, in case for those who weren't aware, but this was taken in February 2011 for their winter gala. I drove up to Keighley the night before to get this shot, and I was due to stay with someone in Haworth nearby, but as I was driving up that Friday night, that person texted me and told me, "Oh no, wait, I'm not at home, sorry, you can't stay with me. You're going to have to find somewhere else." And I had nowhere else to stay at that point. So I tried ringing around a few B&Bs and hotels and so on, and nowhere was free. And I didn't fancy driving all the way back down home again and then driving back up first thing in the morning, because it was a 6-hour drive. So this is the first time I've ever done this, and I won't do this again. I literally slept in my car that night, just outside Top Field. I barely got about 3 hours sleep that night.
Engines that BR felt the need of an engine in similar principle and power. Although they only featured the same boiler as Stanier's machines, the standard 5s were considered by many to be almost refined copies. Which is of course nonsense, because they weren't. They were Eastern influenced.
Not getting that close to the platform again.
Apart from that, the basic design of these engines never really changed. But there were one or two minor issues.
First of these could be considered a fundamental one. The frames. To start with, they were just an inch in thickness, which was okay on older designs, But when you got those two big cylinders thrusting the pistons back and forth, this caused problems with distortion and cracking. They were later thickened by as much as 1/8 of an inch over the years, but they were always considered to be a weak point on these engines.
They also weren't too popular everywhere they went. On the Highland network, they may have proved more economical and easier to fix, but at low speeds, they were reported to be less successful at accelerating than older Highland designs. Then, in the 48 exchange trials, the one engine chosen to take part may have done well on the western region of BR, but on the old Great Central route, the engine flopped below the LNER B1s, burning more coal, producing less power, and on the 15th of June that year, arriving at Manchester from the south 34 minutes down. Ouch. But to some, the main issue with these engines perhaps is their lack of excitement.
Oh god. That's the main problem that people can have with engines like these. Everything is simple, especially the liveries. I mean, there were some that were tried out in various shades of green during nationalisation, but they were overruled in favour of a more lazy alteration. I'm only cringing because I know what's coming, and I think you know what's coming too. I mean, surely it wouldn't hurt to have just one of these things in a different colour scheme. It doesn't even have to be an authentic. I mean, it could be Crimson Lake, or Brunswick Green, perhaps. Or, I don't know, something that isn't just black. Oh, God. Okay, maybe that was a step too far. Yep. Okay, maybe that was just a step too far. But still! Originality? Please? Somebody? Not for you, mate. So, that is probably my one and only attempt to be anything resembling Doug Walker and nostalgia critic. And thank God I'm not doing that again. I mean, you got to remember that back in 2012, YouTube was a very different place at that time, and you know, it was the go-to place really for guys who would rant about pop culture, and really bad pop culture at that, and you know, just mock it to that extent. And I tried that one time to be sort of the equivalent, but then quickly realised in the edit, no, that's not funny, and I'm not doing that again. It did result in one thing that was kind of funny, actually. About 5 years later, when I turned 30, I went up to Scotland to see my friends Ryan and Steve for a couple of days. And we were staying in a caravan in Fife, and Steve presented me a belated 30th birthday present, which bear with me a sec. Which was this, and you would think that it was just an old ordinary Hornby Triang Black 5, but then you take away the cardboard packaging, and he did paint the damn thing pink. And I just remember seeing this, and I don't think I had laughed so hard for a long time. And the pièce de résistance, he actually did put the troll face on the front, didn't he? Cheers, Steve. Apparently the thing does run. I've never run it myself, but apparently it does work. And I opened it, and I don't think I'd laughed so hard for ages. You know, I'd been through a pretty tough breakup a few months before, and I was still grieving over that, but that sort of broke me out of my depressive trance, or rather it was the first step towards breaking me out of that depressive trance, if you like. So, thanks again, Steve. Bastard.
Future was. Okay, that was a rather cynical way of putting it. They're not personal views, I should add.
Although that does kind of remind me that this was made in the days before I really knew how to work a camera properly. You know, those were the days when I sort of used to just point and shoot stuff. I didn't really know anything about white balance or manual exposure or what zebras are for, you know, the things that stop it blowing out to just complete white. And I wouldn't really know anything about that until I started to produce this show properly, you know, about 2 years in. And that's when I just tried to make improvements along the way, technical improvements. Whether or not they actually worked out, only you guys can tell me.
But while it's all well and good to keep things authentic, the livery debate may never cease.
Now that shot there, that was at the Mid-Hants Gala in March 2011. That was a 45379 going backwards into Alton. I sought out that part of the line because it runs parallel with the main road into Alton for a couple of 100 yards or so. And I literally set the tripod in the back of the car, set that running, and then just as the train came into view, I immediately set off down the road and tried to track it as best as I could. But I had to do that while I wasn't even looking, while I was focusing on the road ahead, and I couldn't see what was going on behind me. And at the time, I was quite proud of it, but looking back at it then, and it is shockingly awful. Oh well, I guess you got to make mistakes if you're going to learn from them.
But paint doesn't improve performance. So, under all conditions and in all weathers, the Black Fives continue to soldier on.
Forgot I was on that.
In the case of some, literally, right to the end. By the end of 1967, the only region of British Railways to feature steam on a daily basis was the northwest of England, where these engines felt right at home. Their versatility ensured survival of many to the final days of BR steam, and even, in the case of a handful, the chance to haul the last ever steam-hauled service on BR, the 15 Guinea Special on Sunday, August the 11th, 1968. Truly, they were loyal until the final curtain. It's not surprising that 18 of these engines are preserved, and to this day, many of them are still capable of top-line performance, often standing in for other engines. Take this one for example. In recent years, number 45407 has been one of the most active mainline performers.
I had quite a humorous time getting those close-ups of 45407. This was at York in July 2011 when I was doing part of my round the UK road trip. And I arrived there, she was doing one of her Scarborough Spa circular runs, and a member of staff rounded me up and said, "You're going to have to come and sign in order to do this." And so I signed in, and she explained to the guy behind the desk what I was doing. And the guy behind the desk was an absolute pain, you know. He was one of these Jobsworth type people who thinks that they have more jurisdiction than they really do. And he was going on saying, "Oh, you should be doing this without permission, you should have called ahead, blah, 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 you should need written consent from us." And I counteracted this and said, "Well, I've filmed at Finsbury Park before and I haven't had this problem." And he said, "You're going to love this." He said, "Finsbury Park is Finsbury Park and York is York. There is no correlation whatsoever. It's completely different." Despite the fact that they're both served by the same train operating companies, they're both worked by Network Rail. Okay, Finsbury Park isn't owned by Network Rail, but that's beside the point. And I challenged him with this. And I said to him, "Well, filming isn't a crime, so I'm not doing anything wrong." And I just stormed out. I went and filmed all my close-ups and then got it departing. And I went back to sign out. And he said to me, "This is the first time and this is the last time. Do you understand?" And so I just signed out and didn't say a word and left. And I have been back since, and he hasn't collared me since, but that was 10 years ago. And this is why I don't film so much at stations anymore. I try to avoid it if I can.
Under ownership of Lancashire-based railway engineer Ian Riley, she's been on rail tours all over the joint for donkey's years, and has rarely been known to go wrong.
And it's still one of the most reliable performances in the main line.
But there are others who have had good preserved lives. Remember that one I mentioned with Stevenson valve gear? Well, she lives on too, earning the name of... yes, you guessed it! She appeared at the Rail 150 cavalcade in 1975, had a few successful mainline careers, and has drawn the crowds wherever she goes, thanks largely to her unique mechanical differences.
I'd like to give a shout out at this point actually to the Story family and to Callum in particular. He got in touch with me shortly after this film went public and said, "Thank you for producing this, it was really good." And you know, to the Story family and to Callum, thank you for preserving the Loco. And I hope you guys are keeping well as you can be in these troubling times.
And then there's one of the last ones of all. Number 44871 spent most of her preserved career with the Scottish Railway Preservation Society at Bowness. In 2006, she was acquired by Ian Riley and moved to Bury, Lancashire for mainline restoration. Thanks to some weight-saving modifications, the engine ventured onto the Cambrian network in North Wales in the summer of 2010, proving that these engines really could go just about anywhere.
Camera work's a bit shoddy there, but it's funny because in the last 10 years or so, 44871 has probably been the last steam locomotive to work on Cambrian metals since this was taken. You know, since then, steam has been pretty much outlawed on the Cambrian, not because of weight restrictions or anything like that, but because of the new signalling systems that are in place, and I think it's CRTMS. Someone correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but it's a new form of signalling system which has got to be installed on steam locos if they're going to work again on the Cambrian. And even then, engines of a certain weight are only allowed to run on there. And even then, who knows if it's going to happen again? You know, I think the days of seeing a manor, for instance, on Barmouth Bridge have long since passed. You know, at best you may just get a standard 4 mogul on there again, but who knows at this point. But I think it's probably safe to say that the glory days of steam on the Cambrian have passed, sadly.
Which brings me neatly on to the number of survivors. How well do these engines fit in preservation?
Well, there's certainly enough of them. So much so that it wouldn't hurt to have just one of them in a different, but still fitting colour scheme. Yeah. But I like to think that, although there's still a few of them which have yet to run in preservation, they still prove themselves to be the good all-rounders they were built for. You see, whereas bigger machines tend to do a certain number of mainline trips every year, with the possible gala appearance, these things still tend to run perfectly well on places like the East Lancs, North York Moors, Keighley, Llangollen, Severn Valley and so on. So in a sense, they're still doing the job that they were built for. Running a railway.
To sum up then, the Black Fives were unpretentious workhorses. In terms of sheer excitement, there may be other engines out there that will turn more heads. And some may say that if you've seen one, you've pretty much seen the lot.
Yeah.
But their lack of vulgarity is the ace up their sleeves. When other engines would fail or were limited in what they could do, these machines would survive the typical endurance test one way or another.
Now there's something you don't see, and haven't really seen much of since, a steam departure from Euston. So this was 45305 in November 2010, when she made one of her few outings on the main line in the last 10 years. I'm sure that there's been more than a few, but she has been at least more proactive in previous decades on the main line than she was during the 2010s. And, you know, this was, again, one of the few steam departures that you probably got from Euston in the last 10 years, by comparison to previous decades, perhaps. But this was still quite something to see. It's just a shame that I kind of mucked it up, as you're about to witness.
Many enginemen say that you could go anywhere with one of these. And as long as they're permitted to, nothing can stop them.
And that's how I mucked it up. I put the credits right over the action. AG Media 2012, who'd have thought it? So, there we are. That's the very first episode of Steam Locos In Profile, and speaking for myself, I don't like it. I think it hasn't aged at all well. I think the shots look a little bit naff. I think generally there is some stuff in there which, okay, I'm kind of glad that I carried forward, like the editing style and the music and blah blah blah. I wouldn't go back and make it again, but at the same time I found that a little bit difficult to sit through in some parts. But having said that, only you guys can really tell me if what I do is any good or not. So if you like it, great. If you don't, then I'm sorry you don't. But you tell me. I'm just kind of relieved, really, that 10 years have passed making this damn thing, and some things have been good, some things have been bad, there's been ups, there's been downs, and for as long as people enjoy it, I guess I'll continue to make it. And I guess that's it. Thanks a lot for joining me. Thanks for 10 years of Steam Locos in Profile. If you'd like to see more React to videos like this of all the episodes, then feel free to let me know down in the comments and we'll see what happens. Otherwise, if you like what you see and you'd like to see more on this channel, then feel free to like, share, subscribe, comment, and just don't ever stop being awesome.